One to What We Say Matters, using our words to lift people up. I'm so excited you're here today on one of my favorite webinars to present on. My name is Beverly Tomasian. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Let's start it off with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge and are mindful that Diabetes Education Services stands on lands that were originally occupied by the first people of this area, the Mechoopda, and we recognize their distinctive spiritual relationship with this land, the flora, the fauna, and the waters that run through this area. I'd like to give a shout out to our team, Brianna and Tiffany. They are working behind the scenes, making sure our online courses are running smoothly, answering questions, and just providing you with the best experience possible. I certainly cannot run this company without their support, their guidance, their wisdom, and their hard work. Our company, Diabetes Education Services, is committed to promoting diversity and inclusion in our educational offerings. Throughout our programs and webinars, we consider social determinants of health. As far as conflict of interest, I have none to declare for this program or for any of our programs. What are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to really focus on language that lifts people up. I love this vision of the hot air balloon saying, and it's beautiful, and there's a sky, and there's lots of open space, and hopefully we feel safe in this balloon, because that's what we want to do. We want to lift people up with our words. We want to consider where they're coming from. We want to honor and acknowledge them, and we certainly want to provide them with a positive experience, because we want people to come back to keep engaging with their diabetes and with our program, making sure that we make those meaningful connections. So we're going to consider words and approaches that can be left behind. We'll look at diabetes language that is respectful, inclusive, person-centered, and imparts hope. And hope is such an important ingredient for connecting meaningfully with people with diabetes. We're going to practice communicating about diabetes using phrases free from judgment, with a focus on a strength-based approach. This is so exciting to move from judgment to strength-based. It's not only fantastic for the person receiving the information, but for us as healthcare providers, because certainly the language we use, our body language, our verbal language, and our intentions are very important, and they not only affect the person in our care, but also they can affect us. Now, when did this language movement start? It's about 10 years ago. Dr. Jane Dickinson, and along with Dr. Susan Guzman, said we need to really address the language we use in diabetes, because we know with the current language we're using, we're shutting doors of communication. Let's open the doors and make a connection with people with diabetes that focuses on what they're achieving, and use language that reflects our belief in them. So the use of language in diabetes care and education was published, and then the ADCES also has this beautiful handout, Speaking the Language of Diabetes, which we'll be going over a little bit more. But you can certainly Google that, print it out, and share it with your colleagues. So here's a more up close and personal version. How we talk to and about people with diabetes plays an important role in engagement, conceptualization of diabetes and its management, treatment outcomes, and psychosocial well-being. For people with diabetes, language has an impact on motivation, behaviors, and outcomes. I just want to say this again. For people with diabetes, the language we use has an impact on their ability to self-manage their diabetes and their outcomes. And that's why we choose words carefully, and we are getting rid of old-fashioned phrases. So there's 4 principles that guided this work and served as a core set of beliefs for this paper. And that is, diabetes is a complex and challenging disease involving many factors and variables. And every member of the healthcare team can serve people with diabetes more effectively. So from when that person is called, back to the office, or if they're in the hospital, if they're being roomed, when they're getting their vitals checked, when they're doing a med reconciliation, to when we're coaching this individual. The language that is used across that continuum is such a big deal. And the approach the people that touch that person with diabetes uses can make a big difference, whether we're in the hospital setting or the outpatient setting. Stigma that has historically been attached to a diagnosis of diabetes can contribute to stress and feelings of shame and judgment. So we want to move from judgy, I call it judgy language, to person first, strength based, empowering language. And when we make this shift to using more strength based language, it feels better. It really feels better for us and for the person receiving this new version of communication, because a person with diabetes might be used to a certain way of being regarded around their diabetes. We can shake that up and show them that we are here to connect. So have you heard others using these words or phrases? I sure have. I mean, and in the past, we would use more of a compliance model where we would, say, oh, this person is diabetic and they're cheating. I have heard that so many times. Go, Bev, this person's cheating on their meal plan. Go fix it. I'm like, what? Um, or, oh, they're a train wreck. Oh, this frequent flyer is back. They're not taking care of their diabetes. We used to use the term non-adherent, thinking it was better than non-compliant. We realize non-adherent is the same thing as non-compliant, just in a fancier package. Do they really not care? I don't think so. I think everybody is doing the best they can at that moment. Maybe they're not monitoring their blood glucose. There could be lots of reasons for that. Maybe we might assume that they don't care, but maybe they can't afford the strips. They don't really think it makes a difference. I have people who say, well, I stopped checking my blood glucose. It was always 300. So why should I keep checking? We might say, oh my gosh, they're just eating junk food. And that term junk food honestly has a lot of judgment along with it. So I really tried to move away from that term junk food. I might use the term processed food. It's a little more language neutral. Oh my gosh, do you see? I've had providers pull me over and say this person is eating watermelon and tortillas. So there's a lot of misconception and mythology about food and what foods are okay and making judgments around food. And how about they brought it on themselves? A lot of individuals might think that people with diabetes got it because of their behaviors or their actions, but no one can give themselves diabetes. You can't give it to yourself. How do we get diabetes? Well, it's our genes. So we have our genes that we're born with. And if diabetes runs in the family, we know we're more likely to experience diabetes. And then it's our environment. And much of the environmental influence happens when we're younger. So as we're growing up, there might be things influencing our expression of our genetics, our DNA, especially if that person has undergone adverse childhood experiences. That's going to move that person in a different direction than a person who does not have a lot of adverse childhood experiences. So it starts in childhood. And then as we grow up, what environment are we in? And that's going to influence our behavior. So we know that social determinants of health dramatically influence who gets diabetes and who doesn't get diabetes, or who expresses it is what I want to say better. So we start with genetics, and then it's environment, and then you throw in the other factor, which is aging. So as we age, we're all more likely to have different conditions, and diabetes is certainly a condition that becomes more prevalent with age. So let's just talk about, I mentioned early childhood adversity. We know that when people experience early childhood trauma, they're more likely to have fracture, depression, unintended pregnancies, HIV, STDs, and also they're more likely to have lung cancer in particular, and that's when we account for smoking. So we're not really sure why, but they're more likely to manifest cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular disease. And so we can see that the risk of diabetes already starts in childhood, and that we know that people who've experienced adverse childhood experiences are more likely to have addiction issues, alcohol and drug issues, and also have less ability to generate income and revenue for themselves. So this is an important part that we often don't have a conversation about when we work with people living with diabetes. But many times I will ask people, and when I work with them individually, what was your childhood like? And after you ask that question, you will see on their face a description, just a brief description of their childhood. And many times I'll see people with a very pained looking face, and other times they might say it was okay. But why do I even ask that question? Well, it helps me acknowledge that, it makes sense that you're struggling now with your diabetes. That sounds like it was really rough for you as a child. And let's keep going. Yeah, it's an important to not ignore is what I want to say. So there is a whole program called acesaware.org. It is has free trainings on becoming more aware of adverse childhood experiences. And they have webinars and modules on the science of ACEs and toxic stress, implementing screening, providing treatment and healing grant programs, and ACEs Aware Clinician Directory. So lots of great resources there. I encourage you to take a look and just explore it for yourself, because a lot of us as healthcare professionals might have also experienced early childhood trauma. And that can also influence the way we interact with individuals with diabetes. And so, when we meet with a person with diabetes, we also bring ourselves to that moment. So healthcare is always this intersection of us and the person we're serving. And we both bring whole histories to that moment. I think it's important to consider that from both directions. Um, yes. So when we think about ourselves, I'll just tell you the story about a gentleman I was working with, and he came in to see me, and he was really struggling with his diabetes. And so I was doing a dietary recall, and I was asking him, what do you usually eat for breakfast? Well, he has Hot Pockets for breakfast. And I like, what do you usually eat for lunch? Well, I skip lunch, but for dinner, I'll have a corn dog. And so I'm like, oh, do you ever eat any vegetables or fruits? And he's like, no, I don't really like those. And then I really got stuck on um, this interaction. Like I really wanted this person to improve his nutritional status by eating more fruits and vegetables. And he was not interested in it. But I was so worried about his health that I kept figuring out ways to help him eat more fruits and vegetables. That was my agenda. It wasn't his agenda. He wanted to work on other things. And so, why am I bringing this up? Because obviously I'm not perfect and I make mistakes and I learn from my mistakes. Like after I had that interaction that night, I was driving home. I'm like, why was I so focused on that? But here's the truth. We bring our life experience into each interaction. And so really to reflect on ourselves and reflect on the people we serve. And I work at an Indian health services clinic. And certainly I work with a lot of individuals who are under-resourced, who struggle with mental health issues, who struggle with finances. Many of them are fearful about being deported, and they bring that. So both of us come with these different histories, and to kind of recognize that, I think is super helpful. I just want to kick it off first with terminology matters when we're talking about body weight. And so we've had a big shift for when we talk about body weight, and we'll talk about it now as BMI. Like we'll just keep it very language neutral. Oh, their BMI is 25 or their BMI is 29, instead of saying, oh, this person has diabetes and they're obese. We don't say that anymore because their body weight doesn't define the person. They might be a person living with extra weight or a person in a larger body, but we no longer say an obese diabetic, for example. That is out, because even that term diabetic, that means that's how we define the person. That's all they are, is that's who they are, a diabetic. Now we say person with diabetes, just like a person living with overweight or obesity or a BMI of 28. And so it moves it away from the stigma-based language to just an observation. And as you all know, there's a lot of stigma around weight and around diabetes. And most of the people we serve are struggling with both. And I want to tell you something really important here. And this is from 2025. Abbott did a study looking at missed appointments due to stigma and shame. A recent survey of over 2,600 people with diabetes across 8 countries revealed that nearly 40% of missed doctor's appointments are due to stigma or shame. Okay, what? That 40%. So when people don't show up for their appointment, 40% of the time, it's due to something someone said to them that made them feel ashamed or that brought up feelings of embarrassment or they felt stigmatized. And this could be something like, wow, you're really gaining weight, or man, your blood sugars are really high, or, it doesn't seem like you're trying that hard to keep active. Little things like that have a big impact. We want to consider our language, our body language, and the words we choose are so, so important. And this is great information to share with your colleagues because if people in your clinic or your work setting are missing appointments, I would say, many times we're just like, well, they didn't show up, they must not care or whatever. But that is not the case at all. When people don't show up, it could be because of stigma or shame, or it could be because of some other barrier. But we definitely want to investigate and reach out to them. The thing is, and if you've joined me before, I use this slide a lot because weight is such a heavy issue. So what if we make it mandatory that we weigh people and maybe they feel very embarrassed about their weight? Even for myself, when I go to my doctor's appointments, I'll often say, can I just provide a stated weight? And sometimes they're okay with that, but many times they compel me to get on the scale. And that makes me personally not want to go to the providers. I do, but it feels uncomfortable. Okay, so this scale I love this so much. This scale will only tell you the numerical value of your gravitational pull. It will not tell you how beautiful you are, how much your friends and family love you, or how amazing you are. It's just looking at your gravitational pull. And we'll tell this to people a lot. We'll say, it's just a number, just giving you information. But it's easy to say, it's hard for people to incorporate because weight has so much emotional energy and sometimes lots of baggage. We want to take a weight neutral approach. We want to encourage engagement and health promoting behaviors. The weight on the scale is not the metric of success. It's how they feel in their body. It's their energy level. It's how they feel about changing the way they're eating. We want to encourage body trust and acceptance. And we have, really, there's been a new focus on health at every size, or HACE. And that's Marguerite Fletcher is a real leader in the field. And this approach recognizes that people, even with extra weight, can be very healthy. And we know that people who are lean can sometimes not always be healthy. So body weight is not the metric we want to use. We want to investigate more fully. So we could use a different approach besides looking at the scale. I will continue to care for my body by doing A, B, or C. It doesn't say I will continue to lose weight by doing A, B, and C. I will continue to care for my body. I will focus on small changes such as testing my blood glucose. I will increase my worth by telling myself I am worth self-care. Wow. Right. So many people with diabetes might feel that, they're not worth it. It's not worth it. Why should I do all this work? Let's look at our first poll question. JS is 17 years old and rarely shows up for their appointments. A1C is 11.9. What might you ask JS? A, are you fighting with your parents? B, I'm curious about what is standing in the way of making appointments. C, do you realize that you are at risk for DKA? D, is there a reason you haven't been coming to your appointments? Okay, let me launch this poll and see what you all say. And if this is your first time to our programs, these polls are a great opportunity to kind of evaluate your knowledge and take a risk. This is a totally safe space. So whether or not you choose the best answer, it's fine. Whether you choose the best answer or a different answer, it's a learning opportunity. And so I would just encourage you all to choose what you think is the best answer. Okay, I'm going to end and share your results. And you can see that B was the most popular answer. So let me go ahead. Let's see. All right, I just want to make sure it's not on the screen. Okay, great. So yes, B is the best answer, and B is a little raucous. Like I'm not a big fan of B. Like I don't think I would talk in that way, but here's the part I like about B. It is the best answer. Is that let me just draw the best answer here. Yeah, B. I love the word I'm curious. So, number one, I'm curious about what is standing in the way of making your appointments. So, whenever we use the word curiosity, it opens the door to explore what's happening. So that's why I love this word, this the best. But D, is there a reason you haven't been coming to your appointments, is a little more confrontational. That's why it's not the best one. And then we don't know about him fighting with his parents, or are you at risk for DKA? That's what we would call a scare tactic, and we really do not want to use scare tactics at all. So that's why D is not the best answer, but B is a great strategy. So we know there's a lot of barriers to diabetes self-management, and what goes into managing diabetes. It's like I mentioned earlier, it's complicated. And when we look at the socioeconomic factors, what affects our health, 40% of our health is due to things out of our control: education, job status, family support, income, community safety. I mean, some of these things you might be able to influence, but it's these socioeconomic factors that have been influenced by what family you were born into, your opportunities, what barriers were set in your way, etc. And then we have our physical environment where we live can make a big difference. We know that people who live in more affluent neighborhoods have less diabetes and better health care than people who live in under-resourced neighborhoods. And then 20% is our healthcare. What kind of healthcare do we have access to? What kind of insurance? And that can make a big difference in health outcomes. And then only 30% is our health behaviors. What about our actions as far as activity, nutrition, tobacco use, sexual activity? And so when we look at the whole person, it's more complicated than saying, oh, that person's not taking care of themselves. There's all these other factors that contribute to our health. We want to address barriers, and we want to help people find ways around those barriers. We want to provide trauma-informed care. Like if a person is not keeping appointments or not taking medications as prescribed or not adopting new behaviors, in the old days, we might say, oh, they're non-compliant. But now we have a better understanding, and we say to ourselves, what's happening here? Why is this person struggling to take on these new behaviors? Do we set goals that were too big, or what's going on in their home life that might be causing this, or in their emotional, space inside themselves? So we want to refrain from accusatory language, encourage collaboration, be curious, ask open-ended questions, listen, and observe. The other community that oftentimes won't show up for appointments because they're worried about how the staff might treat them, or they might be worried about bias, or just fear of discrimination, are our LGBTQ community. So members of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community have unique health disparities and worse health outcomes. They have worse health outcomes than their heterosexual counterparts, which has clinical relevance in the delivery of diabetes care and education. We are in a pivotal position to help this medically underserved and vulnerable population get the best possible care. And I think about this a lot in our clinic. Are we being welcoming? Are we letting individuals know from marginalized communities that we are here for them? We want to serve them. They are welcome here. And I think it really is important for all of us to consider, how do we adjust our intake forms? Can we make non-gender bathrooms to welcome people? Is there signage we could put up, or imagery that we can put in our work settings where we see people and serve people, to let them know everyone is welcome here? I think it's really important to consider. So I'm going to ask you to type in your answers here. A self-reflective question. A person shows up to an appointment, forgets their logbook and meter, and tells you they are only taking their daily insulin injection about 4 times a week. What kind of feelings would that evoke in you? And I have, they don't care, non-compliant, lazy, we better scare them, exasperation. So if you wouldn't mind typing in the question section, if a person shows up for their appointment, they don't have their logbook or their meter, and they're supposed to take insulin 7 times a day, they're only taking it 7 times a week, I mean, and they're only taking it 4 times a week, what feelings would that evoke in you? So if you don't mind just typing it, that would be great. Typing in what feelings that would evoke. That would be great. I'll wait a few seconds. Jody's joining us from Chagrin Falls, Ohio, 88 degrees. And Esther's joining us from Santa Cruz, nice beach weather, 74. Oh my gosh. Andrea says New York City is 103 degrees. Oh my gosh. This is crazy. Okay, you guys stay cool. Drink a lot of fluid. Okay, I'll keep going with this. And, these are some common feelings that I have. Doreen says curiosity. Why are they not taking their medication as prescribed? Yeah. I think in the old days, it would be more exact, not by you all, but, in our healthcare systems, like what's wrong? Why aren't they taking their medication? They don't care. We better scare them. And I still see, yeah, scare tactics being used every so often, and they don't work. Scare tactics just close the door. Susan says busy lifestyle, unprepared. Pearl says maybe they're concerned, worried, curious. Yeah. So, right. When we hear this, we want to move away from what I've listed here to feelings of curiosity. We want to engage in our curiosity and go, oh my gosh, I hear you're taking your insulin 4 times a week. Tell me what's going on. I'm curious. And this person might say to you, well, I'm supposed to be taking it every morning before, my long acting insulin in the morning. And it's so crazy. I have to get my kids ready for school and I'm trying to pack lunches and I just forget my insulin. And then we could do some problem solving with that person and go, well, when would be a better time for you to take your insulin? And they might go, well, at night, it's so much, I put the kids to bed. Maybe I could take it in the evening. The answer is within the person. We just have to find it. So when we listen to their story and we ask the questions and we approach it with curiosity, and then they can tell us their life, that's social determinants of health, then we can together connect and problem solve. But the person in the driver's seat is a person with diabetes. And I just have to say one more thing about this. We have the gift of having an hour with a person. We have an hour for the initial visit and maybe a half hour or less for follow-up visits. But if you think of all healthcare professionals, how many of them have the gift of time like we do? And so this is a beautiful opportunity to ask questions, find out about their life, help with problem solving. And that way, when they come back, we have a plan that they've created, not that we've created. I had a person tell me, it's so hard. All day I see, 4 to 6 people with diabetes and I'm teaching, teaching, and teaching. And I would say to you, if you're talking more than 50%, you might want to rethink your approach because really what we need to be doing is listening and finding out from that person what would work for them. So we're really asking a lot of questions. And my kids always say, Mom, you ask so many questions, but to them, but that's how I'm trained. Like, I'm curious, tell me more. This is interesting. I want to support you in your life. So our mindset is coming from a place of acceptance. I am on your side. When we ask questions, when we affirm, that sounds tough. That sounds really difficult. God, it's really challenging. Yes, so we're doing affirmational statements. We're reflecting and we might say, oh, I hear it's hard for you to give your insulin for, every day because you're so busy with the kids in the morning. Did I get that right? Yes, you did. And then we can work on problem solving together. This is not about being the word police. It's about rethinking our approach. So let's use language that imparts hope. It's neutral, non-judgmental. It's based on fact, not stigma. It's respectful, fosters collaboration, and avoids shame and blame. Why not? Because when we use this approach, we feel better too. We want to emphasize what people know, what they can do. So with that example, that person is taking insulin 4 times a week. And we're going to say that, you know what, you're succeeding 4 times a week. That's impressive. It's not easy giving insulin every day. That's absolutely true. Um, Focus on their strengths that empower people. It seems like you are really successful at managing the kids and getting everybody ready for school. How can you use that skill set in your life? Person first, words that indicate awareness, sense of dignity, recognizing what they are contributing. So the old way is we're going to control your diabetes. And I've used this language before. And we realize that there's so many things that impact blood glucose at any given moment. Can we really control it? No, we can manage it. Do we test blood glucose? No, that's a pass or fail. We check it. We don't call people patients anymore. I think in the hospital or clinic setting, when we admit them, they are a patient. That would be, what we would use that language. But when they're out and about in their world, they're not a patient. They're a person, and they're a person who has diabetes. There is we don't say, oh, your blood glucose is normal, or because if it's not normal, it's abnormal. We don't say your blood glucose is so high or it's super low. What we're going to try and that's a very emotionally laden language in a way, because people often assign value of their worth and their ability and their skill level based on that blood glucose. So we just say your blood glucose is on target range, above or below target range. Uh, and we want to focus on diabetes as a condition. So let's look at our 78-year-old. They tell you they stopped taking their blood pressure medications. It doesn't seem to matter whether or not I take them. What is the best response? Acknowledge their honesty and ask them to discuss it with the provider. Gently remind them that stopping their meds is dangerous. Ask them if they are experiencing trauma at home, or explore possible reasons for this action. Yeah, Oliver says I use the term client instead of patient. You're right. That's a terrific term. Yeah, I always say individual, person with diabetes. Yeah, patient is really in the hospital setting when they're receiving care for a particular issue. Okay, so let me launch this poll question and see what you all say. So are we gonna, they tell you I'm not taking my blood pressure medication. It doesn't seem to matter whether or not I take it. What's the best response? Acknowledge their honesty and ask them to discuss with provider. Gently remind them that stopping their meds is dangerous. Ask them if they are experiencing trauma at home, or explore possible reasons for this action. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and show you results. So 92% of you chose the best answer. Great job. 8% of you said A. Now, the reason A is not the best answer is because, yes, we're going to acknowledge their honesty. We'll always do that. Thanks for sharing that with me. But we're not just going to skirt over the issue and say, we'll talk to your provider about this. We're going to explore possible reasons. And what could be reasons people don't take it? Well, I keep getting dizzy when I stand up, or I'm checking my blood pressure at home and it seems to be on target, or I just forget, to take it. I'm supposed to take it at night and I just fall asleep, whatever, because we can help with problem solving. So D is the best answer for this situation. Which phrase represents the principles for communicating with and about people living with diabetes? You are checking your blood sugar daily. Your BMI indicates you're obese. Your fasting blood sugar is above normal. You should try and exercise 150 minutes a week. Which one of these represents, let me launch this poll. Which phrase represents the principles we've been talking about for communicating with and about people living with diabetes? Okay, I'll wait about 10 more seconds. So trust your gut on this one. Okay, I'm going to end the poll and show you results. So 7% of you said D, 20% said C, and most of you chose A. So what is the best answer? The best answer is A. You are checking your blood glucose daily. Why? Because that's affirmational. It focuses on what they are doing. There's no judgment involved. It's just a statement of fact. So some of you chose C. Your fasting blood sugar is above normal. We don't really want to use that word normal in our conversation. We would say your fasting blood glucose is above target. The target's 80 to 130, something like that. So we want to move away from normal, because if you're not normal, you're abnormal. Now, the other thing is D is not the best answer because we're shooting on them. We really don't want to use that should word, because when we do the word should, like you should eat your vegetables, you should exercise, you should take your medications, it has a tone of condescension and it doesn't really engage with that person like, oh, this is a partnership. It's more we're telling them what to do, or we're moving away from that. But of course, you all want them to be healthy. So we want to encourage people to exercise 150 minutes a week. We know that's the standard. This is the thing about it, is this is a fine recommendation. We know it's based on evidence. Move your body 150 minutes a week. But the way we say it is really important. So if you don't mind, instead of telling people what they should do, what could we say for D? Instead of saying you should try and exercise 150 minutes a week, is there a different way we could encourage somebody to move their body 150 minutes a week? And we're not even using the term exercise, as you all know, as activity. You want to, move. I just say move your body 150 minutes a week. So I'll wait for a few minutes to see if y'all type something in here. How else could we phrase this to encourage people to move? And I'm actually asking people now, how many hours do you sit a day? So I'll say there's 24 hours in the day, 8 hours dedicated to sleeping. That leaves 16 hours of awake time. How many of those 16 hours, how many hours do you sit? And so sometimes my first goal is just sitting less. Let's see what you all said. Oh, Pearl says, what kind of movement do you enjoy doing? I love that. Right. Look at Pearl. Did she ask a question? Instead of telling people what to do, if we ask a question and she's curious, what kind of activity do you like doing? What kind of movement? She used the word movement. I love that word too. What kind of movement do you love doing? Or what have you done in the past? What kind of activity have you done in the past that was successful for you? People tell me all kinds of stuff when I ask that question. They'll go, well, I used to walk with my office mate at lunch. I'm like, oh, or I used to go to the gym. I mean, they'll tell me I used to jump rope at home. Oh, okay. And what happened? We're going to be curious. Do you think you want to try doing that again? Instead of saying you should try that again, do you think you want to start? Right now, I'm engaging them. That is really the secret sauce to all of this, is asking those questions, being curious, acknowledge what they're doing right. Let's ditch the old language of the past that is more, what's the word, like telling people what to do, and instead utilize their expertise in themselves. Okay, so let's see. We have somebody else. Oh, Doreen says, can you tell me about how you really think about physical activity? Okay, that's a great question. The person will be like, I've really never thought about it, but let me consider that. I love that. Many people have been successful by doing instead of you should. Yes. So letting them know, other people that I've worked with, they've just started, walking for 5 minutes after meals. Is that something you'd be interested in trying? Okay, so it keeps coming back to them. Like, this is what others have done. What do you think? Will that work for you? We're curious. Coaching styles that lead to behavior change, encouraging, collaborative, start where they are at. So if the person's not moving at all, saying you need to move 150 minutes a week, that's like so unrealistic. So we want to find out what they're doing. Can we build upon that if they're ready? Realistic goals, judgment free. Discouraging and judging is not associated with behavior change. Lifting people up is. I have a whole in my, I have the cheat sheet page. If you go to our website, diabetesed.net, look under free, look under cheat sheets. I have kind of, it lays out how to succeed with person-centered coaching. If this is new to you, it might be really helpful. And of course, it's free. You can share it with others because we know that the language we use influences people's beliefs about themselves. If we show people we believe in them, they're more likely to believe in themselves. If we let them know we think they can do it, they're more likely to believe they can do it. So this is called expectancy theory in language. If we give the person the feeling like they're never going to try, or we don't really think they're going to do it, they're probably going to take that to heart. And they might internalize that thinking, well, man, the provider doesn't believe in me. I don't know, maybe I really don't know how to do this at all. We want to let people know that we believe in them. So, empowerment defined. This word is so overused, but I just love this definition so much. Helping people discover and develop their inherent capacity to be responsible for their own lives and gain mastery over their diabetes. We know that choices made by the person have the greatest impact. We know that people with diabetes are in charge of their self management. When we release that, when we finally recognize they are in charge, we're the coach, we're the support person, we're the cheerleader, we're going to help them with problem solving. It also releases from us feelings of failure if they're not able to achieve it. If they come back and they are not able to take that walk or give insulin 7 days a week, it's not a reflection that we did something wrong or they did something wrong. The plan isn't working. We're going to engage with curiosity again to figure out what could we do differently. Connection and growth. Let's create a judgment-free zone. We don't expect perfection. We expect healthy, good enough. Listen carefully, lean into their knowledge, and our words have the power to create and transform even in the most difficult landscape. And we know that human connection is healing. If you have questions, we're here to help. Here's our email, here's our phone number. I'm Beverly Tomasian, and I want to thank you so much for joining us today and getting the word out about judgment-free care, about this new language movement, and about healing through this very meaningful connection. I'm going to go ahead and stop the record button, but I'll hang out to answer any additional questions. This is Beverly Tomasian signing off.